Assalamu alaikum everyone, we're going to start now. Okay, Assalamu alaikum, my name is Layla, I'm the Outreach Chair of MSA. I'd like to thank Project Taqwa for helping us host this event and welcome our speakers. This event is meant to encourage conversations about mental health, and anything up here is for you to take and learn and understand. If you have any questions, we're going to be displaying a QR code for the Q&A. So it's going to be anonymous, so feel free to ask anything that you want. And I'll hand it off to our Hafiz, Aibad Rahman.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون صدق الله العظيم. Now I'll read the English translation. O believers, seek comfort in patience and prayer. Allah is truly with those who are patient. Never say that those martyred in the cause of Allah are dead. In fact, they are alive, but you do not perceive it. And we will certainly test you with a touch of fear and famine and loss of property, life and crops. Give good news to those who patiently endure. Who say, when struck by a disaster, surely to Allah we belong and to Him we will all return. They are the ones who will receive Allah's blessing and mercy, and it is they who are rightly guided. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Do I have to do the thing? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's really Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 o'clock. Wow, I know everybody's dead. The weather's not nice. But alhamdulillah, I'm thankful for you all hosting us here. We are Project Taqwa, alongside Dr. Jill from UIC. We'll get to intros in just a second, but big thank you to Leila, Ramin, Yunus, whoever was in the group chat for planning and coordinating this all together. I understand the struggles of MSA, just back in my day type of thing, but alhamdulillah, we're happy to be here. I know we have a time limit, so I'll get right into it, but how many of you guys have heard of Project Taqwa or familiar with Project Taqwa? Okay, not bad, okay. So Project Taqwa is a 501c3 nonprofit Muslim mental health organization. We started back in 2019 by a couple of DePaul college students, and it evolved into a nonprofit organization. So we focus on providing resources within the Muslim community. Alhamdulillah, we were just able to open up a free mental health clinic by Masjid Isa and Addison, if you guys are familiar with that area. So Mason and I like to joke that we go on like a college tour. Like we've been to Loyola. I went to Loyola last week. We went to Loyola a couple weeks before that in October, and then last year's DePaul. We were here at UIC last year as well. So alhamdulillah, the college tour is raging on. But before I kind of get into the discussion, I would like to introduce our speakers first. So inshallah, Mason, you want to introduce yourself first, and then we'll go over to Dr. Jalil.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So good to see each and every single one of you. Before I introduce myself, I just want to say shout out to all of you guys for coming because I'm sure you guys have had a long day of classes. I feel like it's been a long week. It's only Wednesday. It should technically be Friday, but it's somehow still only Wednesday. And, you know, I don't know if this is because of what I do for a living. I feel like sometimes when you're in this field, you tend to get overstimulated very fast. But when I walked onto this campus and I'm like seeing thousands of people walking all over the place, I'm like, whoa, like I feel like just walking in the halls of this school can be draining unless you're completely used to it. Again, this could just be me and the nature of what I do, and it tends to drain me very fast. So shout out to each and every single one of you guys for coming. So excited to be here. This is actually, I think, our second time at UIC, at least the time that I've been with Project Taqwa, alhamdulillah. SubhanAllah, it was actually a year ago in February, and it was my very first Project Taqwa event ever. So I've been with Project Taqwa for about a year, alhamdulillah, over a year actually. And I'm a licensed therapist, so that stuff you see on TV where someone's sitting on a couch and they're lying down with their feet up and talking to somebody about their problems and they're just like, oh, my life is so hard. That's my life, and that's what I do for a living. I've worked in all different levels of care, alhamdulillah, so I've worked in inpatient, partial hospitalization programs, and outpatient programs. My focus now is like 18 plus, because over the years, I mean, I've been doing this for like 2 years, you find what works and what doesn't, and I've learned that I'm more of an adult therapist, alhamdulillah. Outside of that, I've done a lot of work with the Orland Park Care Center, and I still do, so make sure you come by. I don't know how far of a drive that is for you, but that's my hometown masjid, and just excited and grateful to be here with all of you, and with Dr. Jalil too, alhamdulillah. I'm very excited for the conversations we're going to have, and inshallah, Allah will pour barakah into the night.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'll concur with that. I want to jump right into it, so I'll just say, this is my home. Been in UIC for about 30 years so far, and I was remarking to another alum who just left about how much things have changed from the food to the parking. Faces still look the same. Alhamdulillah, we still have a good MSA. This is a pleasure. I don't get over here to the east side as much as I would like to, because you know the west side is its own city, and we have all of our own stuff over there, and UIC really is a city within the city. But this is a pleasure, and I was told that this is going to be more conversational, so we can dispense with this PowerPoint slide you probably have heard or watched all week, and we'll just kind of chat about mental health, and hopefully you'll see this as an open space to talk to people who are in the field, who share your worldview and are concerned about your success. So there's no topic which is off the table. Inshallah, we'll do our best to address it.
Jazakallah khair. Can we flip to the next slide? Speaking of slides. Also, on the note of West Campus being its own world, I'm a master's student here, and I'm sure I haven't met anybody here besides maybe Mohib that thinks I'm a master's student. But yeah, West Campus, completely different world. I'm barely here. But what's it called? Very conversational, as you guys see. So I'm more comfortable with the mic in my hand, guys. So we have a big set list in terms of what we want to talk about today. And I want to really open it up to just mental health and as we understand it in the Muslim community. As you guys know, scrolling through Instagram Reels and TikTok and whatever else too that we do these days, mental health is not something foreign to us anymore. I feel like maybe when we were growing up, maybe when I was maybe in high school, middle school, it was something that we just didn't really hear about. But obviously with whatever rise in our generation, this has just been something that's been coming up. And when we think of mental health in Islam, we kind of associate with faith right away, just based off of whatever conversations we may have with our elders, like Mom, I'm sad. Like, just make dua, bro. Like, just relax. Like, why are you sad? And this is kind of like one of the first interactions many of us may have with mental health and Islam. So, and just kind of a little bit of a side tangent too. I was listening to a lecture the other day, and the Shaykh mentioned how the Prophet ﷺ excused a Sahaba from battle. And one of the reasons of it, just because they had an aversion to battle. And obviously we know the importance as men that you must fight. This is something that's, upon you. But as we would classify in modern day, it would be, PTSD from whatever version they might have. Please don't quote me, but that's basically what I've learned from it. This is something I just want to share with y'all. So I just want to open up the conversation to Mace. When we're talking about mental health, how can we foster a healthier understanding of mental health within our community in specific, and what guidance does Islam actually offer with mental health?
I'll begin the way we should begin every single thing, which is by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending our salawat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Say sallallahu alaihi wasallam every single time that you hear his name. So when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I kind of want to start by honing in on what Qasim said about how a lot of the times we're just kind of taught to, read Quran, make dua if you have that struggle, or a lot of times it's just like, don't be sad, you have iman, you have that faith. Why should you be feeling low? Why should you be feeling down, or experiencing depression, or experiencing PTSD or OCD or whatever? I still see this to this day. You guys, to this day, I've had clients that come into therapy and they're like, this is confidential, right? You're not going to tell my mom. And I'm like, no, bro, you're over 18. Even though you actually, are under the umbrella of confidentiality as soon as you turn 12. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to tell anyone. Confidentiality, and also Amanda, like, I'm not going to do you like that. And then they're like, okay, good, because if anyone knew, like, they think I'm here because I want to kill myself, even though I'm just experiencing, like, sadness, or, I broke off my engagement, or I'm struggling with school, or I don't know who I am. And very normal human struggles are still considered this kind of like, what is going on? And even when we have events with mental health, even though I think Project Taqwa was known for being pretty mental healthy, but in my experience, even within Project Taqwa and other organizations, a lot of times if we're doing mental health events, we kind of have to almost trick people into coming and kind of reframe the way that we introduce the topic to everybody. Because as soon as you put something on a flyer that says mental health or depression, people are like, oh no, I can't go there, otherwise people will think I'm depressed or I'm struggling, even though you probably are. So very, very taboo topic, right? I always like to kind of, when introducing that, how do we combat that stigma? What do we do about it? How can we talk about it? How can we make people more understanding of it? Is I don't understand how anyone can expect to go through life and go through this dunya. That is a grounds for, it's a testing ground. It's a place where we are going to be tested, where things are going to go wrong, where we're going to feel low at times. Not to say, it's all completely doom and gloom and we're not going to have good days, but it's going to be rough sometimes. It's rough out here. And I don't understand how people expect to kind of go through life and not struggle mentally at times. Now that varies in severity from person to person, but understanding first and foremost is that we're not here to chill 24/7. This is not a life of eternal happiness. When we describe that, we're actually describing Jannah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells us that we are going to struggle in many, many surahs. And the one that we memorize a lot of times in Juz'am as children is in Surah Al-Balad, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. In constant struggle. We are always going to be struggling in some way, shape, or form. A blessing comes, and then a hit comes. And sometimes, again, we're always in a state of blessing, but sometimes you might have periods of good, and then you might have periods of bad, and then you might have periods of really, really rough and really, really heavy, and that's okay because it's a part of life. And when you are in a state of struggle, you will struggle mentally sometimes, and that's okay, because the interesting thing about struggle and the interesting thing about mental health is it puts us in a situation where a lot of the times no one can really do anything for us, or we might be really struggling to help ourselves. And in that moment of sheer desperation, in those lows of I don't know where to go, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know where to turn, and I'm in so much pain, is actually when we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's actually when we grow that closeness with Him. And if there were anyone that deserved to have a problem-free life or deserved not to struggle, it was who? It was the Prophet ﷺ. And yet the Prophet ﷺ had, if you look at his entire life, it's a trauma history. He went through a lot of different things. And the Prophet ﷺ felt that pain, and he felt that stab in the chest that a lot of us feel a lot of the times whenever someone says something hurtful or something scary happens, or we're living within uncertainty, kind of like we all are now, right? Life in general, I think right now is just, it goes back to the beginning of time. It's all uncertain, but especially right now, the world is quite literally on fire. But the point is, going back to the main point, is that if anyone deserved to live that carefree life, it was the Prophet ﷺ, and yet he had that struggle. But the thing is that he used that struggle to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam, to kind of summarize, doesn't mean that you're going to live a pain-free life, but what Islam does and what a relationship with Allah does is it ensures that in the midst of the storms, you don't drown to the bottom of the ocean. That it gets hard sometimes, yes, but you have your salah. That it gets hard sometimes, yes, but you have your Quran. That it gets hard sometimes, yes, but Allah blesses you with spaces like this where you get to hear something that touches your heart, inshallah, and that makes you feel like, okay, like, it's gonna be okay, inshallah, right? And that might vary from day to day what okay looks like, but at the end of the day, I have Allah and I have my iman, and I am working towards the world where everything will be okay 24/7 and I won't struggle in any way, shape, or form. And so knowing that it's okay to struggle, even if you pray, even if you read Quran, just because you do these things does not mean that you're not gonna feel any sort of pain, or you won't have days where you're deeply, deeply sad or upset, or you won't get hurt, but it means that you have a space that you can run to when those things have Allah, and Allah knows best.
I really loved your points, Mace, especially just because the beauty of our deen is that whether or not we pray the way that we want to pray, whether or not we read Quran the way that we want to, Islam is a space where it validates our struggle. It acknowledges our struggle within this world and within the dunya. And it's a really pivotal point just for us as young people and just in general. It's just a whirlwind of things going on, whether it's job, career, family stuff. People want to get married, people want to do this, people want to travel, people want to experience different things, and then the different, just a swarm of things coming at you from a million different directions. So I want to kick it out to Dr. Jalil. How can we use this understanding of Islam and our deen validating our struggles, and how can we be more compassionate in our community spaces, and overall just normalizing the conversation about mental health?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So alhamdulillah, very good points have been made by our sisters. So if you follow up things, the beauty of Islam is it's a complete way of life. So we have ayat, we have hadith, we have the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ as our best example for all of these things we're dealing with today, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew we'd be here in this time in need of His guidance before there was even such a thing as time. So the real thing for us is not, and I say this as someone who's a professor here, higher education will teach you how to collect information that you don't apply. It teaches a lot of things as if it's a theory, not as something that should be a life plan and a life model. So when we talk about and collect information, quote unquote, about Islam and our deen, we're not studying this like Orientalists. We're not studying as people who just like nice stories. We're not studying as historians. We'll embrace the struggle. So PTSD, when people are triggered, when people disassociate, when people go into excessive fight or flight, that should be different from us. We know pain, we know loss, we know all these things, but our mentality about it should be, this is decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. There are no mistakes. The only question is, how do I respond in a way that reflects what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed, what the companions radiallahu anhu carried forward, and what Muslims throughout history have done either successfully, that I want to emulate, as they emulate the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or when they made mistakes in their response, which are teachable moments for us that we want to avoid. And to complement what has been said, there is an ayah on this topic which is touching, and there's so many. This is just one from Surah Al-Fath, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Muhammadur Rasulullah walladina ma'ahu ashadda aw alal kuffari rahama bainahum. In translation, Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, is the apostle of Allah, and those who are with him are strong against unbelievers, but they are compassionate amongst each other. And that complements what's been said. As we struggle, we want to embrace the fact that we have other brothers and sisters who we depend on and also depend on us to make sure we have these comfortable, mutually supportive spaces. The Muslim Student Association is just like us. It's a reflection of us. It has strengths, it has weaknesses, we have frailties, we have limitations, we also have opportunities and value. So when we come to these spaces, we want to embrace them. And I said as someone who's been working, not only at DePaul when I went to school, but also at UIC, the MSA, you don't go to DePaul? Did you say you went to DePaul?
No.
started at, well, I was too, but.
Oh, okay, alhamdulillah. Oh, I don't want to give him the wrong
I
number.
mean.
Alhamdulillah. So down the street at DePaul, as well as at UIC, we had people who will come to the MSA. They've been converts, like myself. There are people who also are coming back to Islam to practice who may have drifted or got caught up in some of the campus life. And really, you have to open that space, and it's been a win-win situation. That when we're kind and compassionate and encouraging for each other, we not only stay connected as an ummah with our ikhwa, with our brotherhood and sisterhood, but we are trying to all please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we want that atmosphere that pushes us toward the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life, not just a place where it becomes, unfortunately, in some situations, it can become judgmental, it can become abrasive, it can become hostile. That can push you away from deen, just like a supportive space can pull you in and strengthen you. And there's so many people that I have run into, and I have to fully disclose, before I was Muslim, as well as after Muslim, who had Muslim names, were from Muslim families, but did not practice. And alhamdulillah, because of the nature of the MSAs, at least when we're doing what we're supposed to do, we always keep that open door. And you'll have some Muslims who will come back to Islam. You have some people who are impressed by the Muslims who will come to Islam, and they need that mutually supportive atmosphere of which our Muslim organizations and our events like this, where we have open doors, should be. And inshallah, being able to participate in establishing Muslim organizations both on campus and in community, we want to make sure that inshallah, no topic is off limits, no one is beneath our help. Because we want to extend that rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala across not only the campus, but across the city, really across the world. And Chicago is a very dynamic place of people going and coming. And a lot of those going and coming are Muslims. I work with Muslims who are immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, some of them undocumented. And you think about where do we go for help? And the MSAs that I have been involved with, and I'm sure this is still going on as opportunities will emerge even here, there might be someone who's never stepped foot in a UIC class, does not know anything about the UIC curriculum, is not enrolled, but they'll reach out to you, they might reach out to the MSA, and they may come on campus for prayer. And we want to make sure these spaces are supportive and connective, inshallah, as we move forward.
Jazakallah khair. I appreciate the shout out to DePaul, even though nobody wants DePaul. I really love the point about embracing struggle. Just to clear something up a little bit. When we mean embracing struggle, it doesn't mean individually I'm gonna put my head down and I'm just gonna bulldoze through all these problems. The struggle itself is collective. The struggle itself is collective, and what Islam teaches us is that we're supposed to embrace each other within that struggle. It's not more so that we put each other down because of what struggle that you have and you have and you have. Okay. I think one thing I really wanted to point out, just some specific to MSA. I was part of MSA back in my day, aka a couple years ago, and I think one thing that I really wanted to establish, just because this is a community space, so I'm not trying to call anybody out or anything like that, but one thing that we really took strides in was that nobody's beneath the MSA. Nobody is not religious enough for the MSA, or nobody is too religious for the MSA. And I think that's kind of something that's an interesting topic to dive into, just because we often think that just because you're doing this, you're not qualified for that. I know that's something that we all kind of understand. I don't want to get into that too much, but going back to the idea of that we all have a collective struggle, but then we all have unique struggles within us. And especially just around our age, there's a lot of voices floating around our head. Whether it's on social media, just things are constantly fed to us. There's a reason why it's called a social media feed. You're being fed something. And I don't think we take into that account as much as we are supposed to. And even in my personal experiences, there's a lot of just different thoughts and become super stressed. Is this from shaitan? Is this me? Is this not? Where's this coming from? This day-to-day anxiety, how do I manage the stress? How do I, just on a practical day-to-day level, how do I kind of attack this? So I want to just give it back out to Mace. How do we manage our intrusive thoughts? What is this day-to-day anxiety? How can we manage these different environmental triggers and so forth?
As you can see, I'm going to ditch this too because the mic is definitely my comfort. I did not know how to act when that was there. Bismillah. So I'll start with the question, like, is this from shaitan, right? Because a lot of times people are like, is this waswasa? Is it me? Is it, you know, the situational factors? Is it the environmental factors? What's going on? First of all, it's important to know that in any situation in your life, 24/7, from the moment you are born until the day that you die, shaitan is always in the picture. And shaitan's sole mission is to get you to a point where not only are you abandoning the things that are pleasing to Allah, but he would love, absolutely love, and is striving to get you to a point where your mental health is so debilitating, where you feel like I can't pray, and I can't, not even like the, I don't want to call them like non-Islamic goals because everything can be linked to pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but things like school, things like extracurricular activities, he would love to get you to abandon all of that stuff, because if you do, when you sit there and you're emotionally paralyzed, then you're not going to be on the path that Allah wants you to be on. Shaitan always wants to get you to that point. So yes, to a certain degree, shaitan is always in the picture. There are practical ways that you can protect yourself, right? Through salah, through Quran, through afqad, your morning and evening supplications. Do me a favor for 2 seconds. I want everyone to pull out their phone. I want you to download an app. It's called Dhikr and Dua. There are so many different supplications that you can make in the morning and the evening against anxiety, against shaitan, against all the evil that is in the world. So go ahead, take a second to download that. I'll give you guys like 10 seconds. I'm assuming the people who haven't pulled it out already have it on their phone and you're ahead of the game, which is great. Okay, so first of all, like we said, shaitan is always in the picture. When it comes to intrusive thoughts, it's interesting because I'll tell you a quick story. One time, this was like a couple months ago, I was at, oh wait, no, actually it was more than a couple. This was May. Wow, I have like no sense of time anymore. Everything is going by so fast. One of my clients was graduating. I went to Target, I got her a couple of things, and one of them was a notebook, and the cashier was scanning it. She was like, oh, this is a cute notebook, like, who's it for? And I said, oh, it's for a client. She said, what do you do? I said, I'm a therapist. And then, of course, once people hear what you do for a living, they think that means we want to hear your entire trauma history, which is not true, by the way. We have a capacity to. And she goes, can I tell you about my delusions, and can I tell you about my intrusive thoughts? And I was like, you know, I would recommend that you get a therapist. And she was like, no, but I have thoughts that are popping into my head all of the time, and I'm always stressed, and I'm always anxious, and I'm always, you know, feeling this sort of way. When it comes to like intrusive thoughts, again, it varies from degree, like from person to person, degree to degree. And if you're very, very concerned for yourself, we always recommend that you know, get an assessment, check in with a clinician. But for the most part, intrusive thoughts and thoughts that, you know, are negative and sometimes thoughts that are unhealthy is also a part of being human. That is also a normal part of the human experience. And again, shaitan is doing his best to get you to a point where it's very, very, very debilitating and you're thinking negatively most of your life. So yes, to a certain extent, like having that is a normal thing and having that is just a part of being human and again, a part of the dunya. When it comes to like anxiety management, stress management, and I know specifically the MSA team wanted us to address this from an academic standpoint, right? Being in school is very, very stressful. There's a lot of pressure to succeed. There's a lot of pressure of like, I have to do everything right and I have to do everything perfectly. This comes from a lot of the times family. This comes a lot of times from society. This can come from, you know, different professors. Like I remember having like teachers in high school and professors that just made it sound like if you didn't succeed in their class, then you were gonna absolutely fail in life. Not to bash all professors, Dr. Jadid, I'm sure you don't do this, but just make it sound like this is it. Like your whole life and all your self-worth is being defined by whether or not you can perform well in this class. When it comes to that kind of stuff, when it comes to, you know, the school situational factors, there's a couple of things that we want to look at. One of the things that can help you tremendously in life is awareness, right? Awareness of your thoughts, awareness of where are these thoughts coming from, where are these experiences coming from. That's something that therapy is very helpful for because it helps you unpack that stuff. But I want you to kind of think for yourself individually now. A lot of the times when I'm working with people who are like very stressed about school, and I mean like this is excessive, like you're freaking out, you're anxious 24/7, you're going in to take a test, and obviously to a certain degree there might be some level of anxiety, but you feel like it's chronic and it interferes with your day-to-day life. If you feel that way, where exactly is it coming from? With a lot of people that I work with, sometimes it's the family. Sometimes people have learned that you are only worthy as a human being and you only have a place in the world and you only have a place within your friendship circle or your family or a community if you do really well. Where it's like if you do well, you get those A's, you get that good feedback, you're rewarded, pat on the back, good job Ali, you're so wonderful. But then if little Ali or college Ali doesn't do well in school, then it's like there's negative feedback, sometimes parents turn away, give the cold shoulder, and so what this person, I guess it's Adi in this case, that was just like the first out of name that popped to mind, but in this case, what Adi has learned is that I only have worth and I am only deemed worthy and I only have a place in this world if I'm doing well in school. And so a lot of the times it becomes not just a means of, hey, I want to succeed and hey, I want to do well, but if I want to feel like I belong in the world, then my grades have to be perfect. And so a lot of the times, you learn that you only get to have a place and you only get to have a sense of belonging if you're performing a certain way. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is like, there's that fear of failure that comes in too, right? Of like, I have to get this right, and if I fail, then everything is just gonna suck, and I suck. Sometimes with people, it's very black and white, it's very all or nothing. It's actually called a cognitive disorder. This is a very, very big one that we see. If I get good grades, then I am smart, then I feel good about myself, then all is right in the world. And if I don't, if I get a C, or if I get a negative comment from a professor, or if like you ever get those, well, I don't know if like professors write on papers anymore, but like if you would get those question marks next to on your paper, like what the heck is that? Like it's something you wrote doesn't even make so much sense to the point where the professor didn't even leave an actual comment. It's just like, what is this? If that happens, then it's like I suck, complete downward spiral, then there is that fear of failure that you're feeling, and that does come again from different situational factors and environmental factors in your life. There's always a reason that we are acting the way that we are acting, guys. There's always some sort of experience that you've had with a family member, within the family dynamic, within friends, that might cause you to feel that way, that might cause you to overthink, that might cause you to have perfectionistic tendencies, right? Of like, I cannot make a mistake. When in reality, we know intellectually we're human and Allah created us to mess up and Allah created us to make mistakes, but emotionally we still feel like to a certain degree there's no room for error. And so my advice would be is to kind of, you always have to be in this kind of process as a human and as a Muslim of like self-monitoring yourself, of like, why am I acting the way that I am? Why am I feeling the way that I feel? Kind of that exploration, that emotional awareness and that emotional intelligence piece will help you a lot to figure out where that pressure is coming from. And then a lot of the times, and this is something that people come to for therapy a lot, where it's like, you kind of have to learn to be the source of support that you never had growing up. So a lot of us didn't have parents that were accepting of us making mistakes, or communities that were accepting of us making mistakes. A lot of the times, I will emphasize, this does come from community sometimes. Like, it's not just family. Sometimes you might have a put-on teacher where it's like, did anyone have like the ruler like smacked on the desk if they got, okay, well, this is a very universal experience, right? Even something like this, growing up, having a put-on teacher that's very harsh, like, don't make mistakes, you're not allowed to mess up. You kind of start to internalize that message of, hey, like I cannot, and you become very, very overly conscious of yourself. And so what you can do as an adult is you learn to start giving yourself the same love and support that you didn't have as a kid. So when you start to hear yourself have those thoughts, those negative thoughts, being able to stop and tell yourself, like, I'm allowed to slow down, to go slowly. This is a very, very big thing. A lot of us are just kind of running on autopilot all day, not really taking the time to like actually like be in the moments of what we're going through on a day-to-day basis, to let yourself take breaks, to let yourself rest, to tell yourself that it's okay to make mistakes. Not only is it okay to make mistakes, it is inevitable to make mistakes. And if you are going to link your self-worth to school, to performance, to who wants to be your friend, who likes you, who doesn't like you, then you are in for a very, very, very long identity crisis that could quite literally last your entire life. The key in this situation is not only to take breaks, not only to pause, not only to take a deep breath when you feel like you need to, right? 4 inhales, 4 second inhales, 4 pauses, 4 second exhales. But then also a big part of it, you guys, is learning to put your self-worth in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is one of the biggest things. These intrusive thoughts, this negative thinking, this overthinking, this pressure that we put on ourselves all comes from what? The root of it is this very, very, very deep-rooted shame that we fear. That fear of I'm unlovable, no one's gonna love me, if I am less than perfect, or if I mess up, then people are going to abandon me, then I'm going to embarrass myself, and I'm going to be abandoned, right? And those of us who have abandonment wounds, that hole might take us a little bit longer to crawl out of ourselves, But the point is you need to learn, and this is something that you could do through therapy, this is something you could do through your salah, through the Quran, is learning that your self-worth does not come from anything or anyone other than Allah. You want to know whether you have worth in this world, you want to know what your status is. Your worth is tied to were you invited, right? Not choosing to, invited to pray 5 times a day today. Or maybe even more. Your sunan, your qiyam, your tahajjud. Your worth is, did Allah invite me to open the Quran today? Your worth is, was I inspired to make dua today? That doesn't mean that we neglect everything else that we have to do on a day-to-day basis, all our other responsibilities. But at the end of the day, you are not here to be an engineer. You are not here to be a teacher. You are here to worship Allah. This is why you were created. Being a teacher, being an engineer, doing all the things you want to do is great if you are looking at it in the lens of I want to please Allah, of I want to be a teacher because I want to, because Islam puts so much emphasis on education and I want to deliver that education to other people. When you do that, and your mission in life becomes how do I please Allah and not how can I get people to, and not to say we don't want people to love us and respect us, and that should be important to you. You shouldn't just be like, screw everybody. But when you're so laser focused on your mission in this world, and that mission is how can I get Allah to be pleased with me, and what does Allah think, instead of being so consumed with the opinions of people, with the opinions of teachers, with the end results of all the efforts that you put into something, and remembering at the end of the day, right, everything is your efforts and the barakah that Allah puts into it combined. When you let that be the driving source of things, then you will have those intrusive thoughts, but you will know how to manage them. So that self-assessment piece, that learning to tie your worth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just, it's okay, you guys, like, things work out. If you get a D or if you get a C, it's okay. If you don't get a very good performance review, it's okay. You will find a way. There is always a way. There is always something you can do. Hadha wallahu a'lam, that been talking for a while. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk and stuff up there.
MashaAllah, time is flying. I really appreciate all the points of how you really painted the picture well of how just so many of these things are attacking us, whether it's from childhood, whether it's now, whether it's career, whatever it may be, family. I think one thing, you mentioned autopilot, and I think one thing that kind of woke us up from autopilot was obviously a year ago when everything happened in Palestine, and that kind of shook us all to our core. And I know I'm skipping one in kind of our order right now, just for sake of time, but I want to give it to Dr. Jalil and talking a little bit about how this political climate has affected the Muslim world, but all of us mentally in our own different ways, and how does it contribute to this mental health struggles that we've been experiencing, and how can we cope with the stress and anxiety that are induced by what's going on overseas?
Bismillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminded us of Surah Al-Baqarah, Am hasibatum an tadkhulul jannah. In translation, or do you think you shall enter the gardens without trials? And on that ayah, all the way to the end, as Allah is challenging us to remember, and this was revealed in Mecca when the Prophet ﷺ was under intense pressure, and so were the companions, and they're pleading for the victory of Islam to come. It concludes with, Ala inna nasrullahi qareeb. Surely the help of Allah is always near. Now, linking to the point that was brought up by our sister, when you respond to stress, how many people in here have heard of fight, flight, or freeze? Okay. So when you think about it, the fight, flight, or freeze is a reaction that could be you're lashing out against other people, you're freezing, which could include disassociation or even people who self-medicate or try to avoid things. And it could also be flight, where you leave the situation, a type of avoidance that can be not just physically leaving, but mentally or socially departing from a situation because it's just too much stress. And so if you feel yourself in one of those reactions where you're either fighting, you're running, or you're freezing and disassociating, this is the time to really reach out for the help that our sister's talking about. And some of that can be self-destructive behaviors. I just want to mention that quickly, because sometimes our young people, such as yourself, may feel the pressure and you say, you know what, I'm not going to pop off and yell at my parents. I'm not going to lash out at this person in class. I'll just cut myself. Or I'll just take this medication, but I'll take 10 times what I should. I'll just stay in bed and I'll sleep. Or I'll disassociate literally by not thinking about a situation as if it's going to magically disappear. And these are not healthy reactions as we know, but they're also not abnormal reactions when you're under intense stress. Those are normal reactions when people feel ill-equipped to handle the stress that they've been placed under. And these are also things that you'll see amongst your peers and out in society that they say, well, you really shouldn't, but there's a lot of subtle and tacit approval for you to do anything as long as you stay out of my way and don't cramp my life. So when we deal with these stressors, including some of the ones I'm going to bring up, be aware of the fact that we don't want to avoid it. We don't want to lash out randomly or recklessly. We want to confront it by using the example of the Prophet ﷺ and using his words, his actions, the way he interacted with the rest of the companions, and we take those practical actions. And even if we don't eliminate some of these problems we see in Palestine and Kashmir and all the other places, we'll be able to, inshallah, earn or be granted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. And you think about those companions, they didn't even get a chance to make migration. They never made it to Medina. You think about the people who were lost in the battles before Yom al-Fath, before the day of liberation in Mecca. You think about even the people who, they never saw Constantinople open, but they were successful if they were doing what they were supposed to do at the time towards the political situations, toward the economic situations, toward the social situations. And as we think about that today, see yourself as part of the arc of history which started at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, we talk about the real arc, we're talking about all the prophets and messengers who never had an easy time, ever. And if you look at, as we're connected to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Quran and the revelation of Islam, there's nothing but struggle, striving, some successes, some stressors, and sometimes they happen right after each other, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when He sends the stress, He also sends relief. إِنَّمَا الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّمَا الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. They come together, right? And we talk about Palestine, we could go across the Muslim world. See yourself as part of that arc, and the question is, what are we supposed to do today? And we shouldn't be the ones who are only a prisoner to TikTok, Fox News, and others. How about all the people who are not on TV? Remember, I even felt, subhanAllah, I was talking to some of the brothers and sisters from Syria, when things started happening in other areas, they said, oh, they're going to forget about us. How about the people in Bosnia? How about the people in Kashmir? How about the people in Sudan? There's a lot of crises which are going on, and if we think about it, without our aqidah, we'll say, oh, it's just too much for me, I'm overwhelmed. Let me just concentrate on myself. Let me just concentrate on my degree. Let me just try to make it here. Let me just try to survive. And survival is not what a believer tries to do. A believer tries to be successful. And as has been mentioned, the success is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The success is a pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning we're taking the actions. We're doing the best we can. We're constantly trying to improve. And when the stress comes, embrace it. It's expected. If we have Islamic understanding, we don't run from it. And as we embrace it, there's nothing wrong with us getting help, getting support, getting encouragement, increasing our ibadah, doing all these things because we have to embrace the challenges that we have. And I'll say, because we are short on time, I'll say it's ironic that we're having this at a time that most of this country is still celebrating Black History Month. Who are the most famous Muslims in the African American community? Clearly you can make an argument for Malcolm X. You can make another argument, and I'm talking at a global level, Muhammad Ali. And think about it. Why do we remember their names? Just because they happen to be African American? No, it's because of struggle. It was because of Al-Hajj Malik Shabaz's struggle. It was because of Muhammad Ali's struggle. And it was doing things that was unpopular at the time, but it was right. That's why we remember them. That's why the world remembers them. And for us, we appreciate those modern, tangible examples. Why? Because they're only exemplifying what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, and it helps us, as they say, connect the dots.
For the sake of time, I want to prioritize Q&A. So if you guys can scan the QR code, really quickly, if you guys have questions to put in, I really want to prioritize that in the last 10 minutes that we have. If anybody has anything that comes in like immediately, but other than that, I'll kind of move on to the next topic. But I think that was a really beautiful point, just how the struggle is what elevated these prominent figures to who they are today and what we recognize them as. Pivoting the conversation to another topic, to what might be common to a lot of us, is when we're seeking out help or want to seek out help or just opening up that conversation. It usually doesn't just involve us. We usually reach out to a friend, a family member, or somebody that's a respected elder. So just really quickly, Mace, how can we navigate these conversations with our parents or elders, just because of the common tropes and themes of like, what does everybody think? Like, they're gonna think you're depressed, they're gonna think you're suicidal, they're gonna think you're this or that, whatever else too. So how can we navigate and soften the conversation? Because obviously there's a level of respect that we need to have for our parents and elders, but how can we bridge the gap of understanding between the two?
First of all, I just want to say, Dr. Jenny, Jazakallah khairan, for your TED Talk, because that was amazing. You give me vibes of like that character in the movie who like gives the protagonist like a pep talk and then they like change their whole life. Like, I'm glad that's being recorded. I feel like next time we all feel low, we just gotta replay that. So may Allah reward you. When it comes to like navigating, getting help, navigating those conversations with family, navigating, and I don't know why this is so big in the Muslim community. Not to say that my non-Muslim clients don't experience this, but I kid you guys not, like more Muslim clients have the mentality of like, what will people think, more than the non-Muslims do. Like every single person, that's the first thing they say. What are people gonna think? What are people gonna say? And it's interesting, Qasim, that you were like, what do we do if this is what our families are telling us, but then we're talking about like struggling with fear of failure and struggling with anxiety and perfectionism. Like, where do you think this stuff comes from? You know, the thought of like, what will people think? And the families are always saying that. Rarely do we hear anyone saying like, what will Allah think? And I think first of all, it's important to note that that should be your guide to making all of your decisions, right? What will Allah think? And understanding too that you guys in psychology, like if you take Psych 101, this will be one of the first concepts you hear about. It's called the spotlight effect. You know how like that concept that everyone thinks that there's this spotlight just shining down on them and that everyone's watching their every move and waiting for them to fail. It is absolutely not like that at all. In the nicest way possible, nobody cares what you are doing, first and foremost. Absolutely no one cares. Everybody is so consumed with their own worries and their own struggles and their own set of embarrassments. Nobody is replaying the time you rose your hand and you said the wrong answer in class. Nobody's replaying the time that you slipped down the stairs in front of the thousands of people at UIC. Nobody's thinking about that. That is you being overly conscious of yourself. So keep that in mind first and foremost. And also remembering too, that comes from that deep-rooted shame, right? That fear of being unlovable. I'm going to answer this. I'm assuming you meant in the concept of like seeking help and seeking therapy. First of all, if you don't want to tell people that you are going to therapy, you don't have to. This like, what are people going to think? What are they going to think if you're depressed? What are they going to think if you have suicidal ideation? You always get to figure out what you want to disclose and exactly who you want to disclose it to and what level you are comfortable of sharing in your life, right? So if you are going through things, if you don't trust your aunt or your uncle, you don't have to tell that person that you're struggling. If you have a trusted friend, that would be a better person to tell. So being selective with who you tell, I feel like when it comes to the Muslim community and like people still not be fully accepting of therapy, a lot of times parents don't know what therapy is. Sometimes I've had some parents think that like therapy means you're going to like the psychiatric hospital and you're going to be gone for like 10 days and they just don't understand what that level of care is. People don't understand that therapy is just a way for you to explore the things that you have been through, to gain that awareness that we were talking about, to get to the root of why you are experiencing, why you are the way that you are, why do you function the way that you function, why are you attracted to the things that you are attracted to, why do you choose the friends that you have, getting into the childhood trauma aspect of it too, right? What experiences have you had that have made you the way that you are? And then figuring out, what are some new ways of being? What can we do differently? How can you act differently? How can you identify your triggers? Sometimes people don't even come in because they have this huge trauma history. Sometimes people want to come for like a couple of weeks to figure out what major they should pick or whether or not they should get married to a certain person, like very normal day-to-day things. And so I think helping people understand what therapy is is a very big part of it. Make sure you understand what it is yourself too, right? Do your own research, and then try your best to help them understand that, you know, this is a step that I'm taking for myself. This is a step that I'm taking for myself to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that therapy is something that can actually be an act of worship. I will say that again, therapy is something that can be an act of worship. When you go into your sessions for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, I'm here because I kind of want to clean up the mental clutter in my brain so that I can have more space in my head and more space in my heart to do things that are pleasing to you. That is an act of worship, and understanding too that this whole, like, what are people going to say if they know you're seeking help? We all need help. Like, who is out here doing life completely on their own? Allah created us as social beings. We need each other, and also understanding that the help of the people is the help of Allah. And also knowing too that, like, to a certain extent, however people react to you going to therapy, to you seeing a psychiatrist, to you, you know, getting like partial hospitalization program, enrolling in that, or even getting an inpatient hospitalization if that's what you need, right? It's all about what you need. You can't control how people respond to that. You do your part, you handle that gracefully, and you leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But definitely helping people understand what it is and why you are doing it is something that can be helpful. And then if they don't respond, you know, if you're not getting certain support from your family, then knowing that Allah will send you support in other ways too. Knowing that you always have the support of Allah, you always have the help of Allah, and that is the main source of support in your life. And then inshallah, Allah will send you, you know, communities, friendships, where people will be understanding and you feel very seen.
So, I know we're approaching 5 p.m. I have class at 5:30. Your mom's calling me. You need to go home. We're going to need to wrap it up soon. But just on, we have one Q&A. We opened up discussing how we want to address any and all topics. Just a little bit of preface. It's a little bit of a heavier conversation. Again, just thought we could keep it quick, but obviously in respect to the question itself. So, how can we get over suicidal ideation as a Muslim? I don't know if anybody wants to take a quick stab at it. Response.
You can have, I'm gonna make a quick comment to connect, and I'm gonna turn it over to you to reply to that. And I have to be blunt because we don't have much time. I will say this. I work not only with the adults and families and young people, children and adolescents across the lifespan. Please be patient and prompt your parents. Because a lot of times, and I'm just gonna cut to the chase, they don't understand your life. They don't understand this generation. They don't understand TikTok. They don't understand social media. They don't understand why you have to take a picture of the food before you can eat it. Literally, they're saying, Julia, what's wrong with them? Like you said, I don't know. But they're like us. And so sometimes you need support to tell your parents and your family, and sometimes you have to take a brief break, but don't cut them off. You can take a break, but don't look to cut them off. Because as Muslims, we are part of a family and a community. Sometimes you need other adults to talk to your adults. And I can say, they're just like us. They're doing it differently. They're expressing it differently. And trust me, I'm born and raised in this country. I can pull files about what was going on here for a long time, right? And when you can help them understand that you all are young people or young adults trying to navigate life the same way they did, but making different choices and having different struggles, these are times that then they may be open. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Sometimes your parents and family members are unable, sometimes they're unwilling, but don't confuse the two. And if you need help, reach out to the other amus, you know, so we can make some connections for you, because I've had to do that many times. But go ahead with the very important one.
I will say that a lot of the times, and I'll try to keep it brief, inshallah, because I know subhanAllah we are at a time, which is crazy. I feel like we just started, but if it's people who are typically experiencing suicidal thoughts, feel very unseen and feel very lonely, right? There's usually a lot of also different series of experiences that they've had that are very, very heavy, and it makes them feel like I don't want to be here anymore, I can't do this anymore. Keeping in mind too that when it comes to suicidal ideation, it's not that people want to actually die, it's that they want the pain to end and they don't know how to make it end other than by taking their own life. May Allah protect us. This is a situation where you need to seek out help, and this is something that's very difficult for people. I know that sounds so self-explanatory, but we are more likely to abandon ourselves and not take care of ourselves in the moments where we need to take care of ourselves most. One, in the moments, there are different crisis hotlines. I don't have like the numbers memorized. What I can do is give them to Neda, and hopefully you guys have a chat or something and we can send it in there. Actually, really awesome news. The Stanford Muslim Psychology Lab, I think I'm saying it right, they actually just came out with a new Muslim crisis hotline that you can call if you are in crisis. If you feel like I'm seconds away or minutes away from taking my own life, you can call it. You can call the regular crisis hotline, but please, you need to seek some sort of help, right? If you are, like, the fact that you are considering taking your own life means you've got some heavy experiences inside of you, means that you need to learn new ways of taking care of your mind and taking care of your body and learning what to do in a crisis. And so one of the best pieces of advice I could give too is a lot of places do offer free assessments. So I know, I mean, this is in the suburbs, I'm not sure in the city, but like places like Linden Oaks Hospital, I'm sure there's different hospitals around here, they will give you a free assessment and they will recommend what level of care is appropriate for you. But knowing that you deserve to have spaces where you feel like you can fall apart, you deserve to have spaces where you can explore the thoughts that you're having, but not leaving it unattended, right? And also on top of that too, making sure that you spend time with people that I always say make you feel like you're with an exhale in the form of a human being, like people who support you and people who make you feel like everything's gonna be okay. And then obviously the Islamic component of it too, of making dua, knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can, inshallah, restore your heart, restore your mind, and restore your body.
I mean, to kind of end it off really quickly here, just as a little bit of practical piece of advice. So, one thing I've learned in the past couple of months is a quote. It's not a quote. It's be who you say you are. And I think that really applies to our Muslim community, where we claim that we're this loving and accepting and like, yeah, just come, like, we love everybody, we care for everybody, and sometimes it's not the case, unfortunately. So when we're walking down the quad, which is like two pieces of like turf, like I don't know what you call it, I just call it a quad. But when you walk past somebody, just say salam, just hey, how are you? I've had my low days and whatever it may be. Just a quick salam and the checkup of hey, how are you? How's everything going? It's like, and somebody smiling at you, like that lifts you beyond belief. You don't know. You really don't know what's going on in each person's head. So I know I'm the type to kind of like I just will kind of hide around this corner and just not say salam to that person, just like you'll scoot by. But this is where we have to be who we say we are as Muslims and be that community and be that support system for people that we might not even be that close with. That's where it really comes into play. The people that we're close with, we already know. That's built in. The struggle, the real striving, the real effort comes in to the people that we might not be as close to, and those people might really need it. So inshallah, may Allah protect us all, and just for having us. If you guys are interested in Taqwa,